All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Tennis Fans podcast. This is Tuck.
And this is Shi.
So, what are we planning to talk about today?
So tournament season is coming up, right? So today we're going to be talking about some kind of preparation on how we can best prepare ourselves for the tournament season. Training wise, we've been training like crazy over the past year or so. But then I remember in one of the first few episodes we talked about is one of the things that Djokovic does or player does nowadays is they not only train physically, but they also train their mental part. So one of the thing I always kind of say and acknowledge about myself is we play a lot of tennis, we play a lot of point, but we haven't played a lot of like matches or like practice sets yet. So we're training that part up, right? But then also training that part up, giving us more confidence on the mental side to deal with like match pressure. So we have about like 2 months left before all the tournaments start. But yeah, like today I really want to hone in and talk about like when the time tournament season come around, how can you get into that groove mentally so that you feel confident going into matches.
Yeah, like just match play in general. Like obviously, like I think everybody kind of seen like these sort of memes online of like, during practice versus during match because it's completely different.
It's completely different.
It's like when we're practicing, we're there's nothing at stake.
I think it makes sense because and to a lot of people out there who like play tennis day in and day out and playing a lot of tournament, they probably know this very well. It's like when you actually come to a match, there's a lot of stake on the table. Whether or not it's a small tournament, the bigger the tournament, the more stake it has. So your body mentally, it's more tense when it comes to those kind of things.
Yeah.
And not only during the match, but the build up to it too.
Yeah.
Right. Like I find myself like last summer playing tournament, you like looking at the draw, you looking at like who you're playing, and then you have all these like thoughts in your mind before the match even took places, and sometimes that can take a toll on you and understanding how to deal with those situations, those thoughts. I think it actually it will actually be very helpful for somebody who's going into the tournament and play those tournaments.
Yeah, I would say like, I mean, this is basically speaking from our like sort of limited experience doing match play and like going into like the competitive scene. So I mean, hopefully like eventually down the line we can bring on like some people that can kind of like shed their insight on like their experience actually like competing over the years
Day in
day in and day out. And so like that would be like interesting to kind of like really dissect their brain a little bit. But in terms of us, like I think what's really important for us in order to kind of prepare for this upcoming tournament season is just really just, well, first of all, just take it step by step, like how we've been doing. Is that like we've gone from just casually rallying to now kind of like thinking about how to construct points, like construct these points, and we play out points. And eventually we would like to kind of like actually transition to playing sets and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just to kind of like prepare ourselves mentally, like like when you put into these like specific like pressure situations, because like like in like now we've kind of like kind of gotten ourselves into this like routine of like, okay, we need to practice a certain way to be more productive, and like there's so many different shots to kind of learn. But now it's just like we also need to think about like match play in the sense that like we need to put ourselves in these specific situations, these specific pressure situations, so that we can kind of like train ourselves mentally to prepare for those moments when we're competing.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that we've been doing really well about is moving away from just rallying down the line.
Yeah.
Like down the middle. Yeah. It's just like those are, they keep saying it over and over again, right? Whenever we out there on the court, like that just doesn't do anything for your improvement, because that's not how like points are being played in tournament.
Yeah.
And this is specifically addressing to the people, including ourselves, that looking to play tournament and looking to compete.
Yeah.
If somebody's out there, really happy with like one of the coaches at the court telling us like, if you guys are very happy just to rallying down the middle, by all means, like that's the way you want to play tennis.
That's our objective. Yeah.
That's totally fine too. But if you're looking to like actually building tournament play, that's why it's really important for players out there to play tennis, think like, what is your objective? What are you trying to do?
Yeah.
If you're trying to play tournament, you should there's the mental aspect, but it's essentially the mental aspect is how do I say it? It's accommodated, right? Is the term by practicing the physical, like the practicing the point, like playing out the point.
Yeah.
Playing out the point will help you like understand, like helping you when you go actually to mental match, your brain say, oh, I've done these kind of situations
Right.
before. Like
It's like conditioning your brain.
your brain, exactly. Like if you're doing down a line,
Yeah.
that's or like just down the middle rally, and then you play out from there. That's how your brain's gonna think. And then all of a sudden, when you go into a real match, the point is different.
Yeah.
The point is completely different. How do you? So it's so important to listen to what people say about like point play, is for you to like freaking move the point around and construct the point.
Like we need to play enough to where it's like you don't you almost feel like this is kind of like a natural thing for us to do.
Yeah.
So where like, you know, when we get to like these tournaments where it's almost like we've conditioned ourselves to think like this is just like another match that we have to play. Because like, you know, obviously right now, like there, which is good, we're building up to it, like we're playing like points and stuff, and you know, like there's a goal, like we have a goal now, which is good. But then like now it's like we have to take it a little bit more further, like into like the actual game of tennis.
You have to train on like the specific shot, the specific point that you want to play.
So like there's that, and then also like I think something that we don't really think about during practice is like not all too often is like the point construction. I think it's just like kind of, it's like, oh, I'm gonna hit the ball here and then hit the ball there, when like, you know, there's like very specific plays that we can kind of follow and then like just practice, and then once you're kind of put in that sort of specific situation, you can try to execute it. And I mean, like I guess that's the not super reactionary part of it, but like, you know, I think it can go both ways in that like you have to train your reactions to certain points, but then also like learn like these specific like point play that like that have kind of, you know, kind of been ingrained in tennis over
the different point play and all that kind of stuff. I feel like you're doing it to put yourself in uncomfortable situation to learn, because that's what your opponent is gonna be doing to you when it comes to match play. Because you'll see, like when you start playing tournament more, is your opponent's gonna start dissecting you on certain shot that you don't have, and they're gonna explore you on that. So the purpose of doing these training, these different point, these situation is for you to adapt to those uncomfortable situation. One very specific thing that I noticed is like, I personally, I never really liked being at the net. Half a year or 6 months ago. But then as we start training more and I start forcing myself up there, I miss crazy amount going up. Like I move up there sometime, I hit the volley into the net, but over time, my body and my brain start recognizing, oh, the reason why I miss it is because I was too late on certain shot. And then over time, I'm faster up there, and then I put the volley away. It's putting yourself in those uncomfortable situation in practice, so that when it's come the match time, you don't have any weaknesses, or as much weaknesses that you should have for your opponent to exploit it.
and like not really like hesitation to kind of execute certain shots, right? Like you know exactly what you need to do.
Yes, exactly. So like it's not like nobody has weakness, but how well are you trained to hide your weaknesses or to eliminate as much weaknesses as possible?
Like tennis is very interesting in the fact that like there's like so many ways to kind of like look at things. So like I guess for example, is it like, you know, when you're talking about like what one person is able to physically do, like what the human body's limits are, right? You know, like, you know, if and we're talking in terms of like, this is relating to sort of like the point construction, right? Because like, you know, if you were to drive somebody out wide, like what are like the only possible shots they are able to get back? And that's the sort of thing like we start to get into, is like, you know, if I drive somebody like out wide, are like are they gonna be there? Is their body gonna permit them to be able to go down the line or like cross court, or like realistically speaking, like what's a safer shot for them to play? And
Yeah.
then that's when you can kind of start dissecting into it and be like, okay, this is where I can anticipate where he's gonna be going next.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah. And it over time, like I said, that's the kind of the skill set that you hone in over time to be able to read the body of the person's body language when they're being pulled out wide, those kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The very simple thing is the moment that the very simple thought for at least me right now is, or it triggers me over the time now like that. I just see it and I know exactly right away and I automatically move forward.
Yeah.
Is you pull out somebody out wide and you see them going to like a one hand backhand.
It's always like a floaty ball, right?
A floating ball, you go in right away. It doesn't matter if your opponent is being pushed to like a one hand out wide and like do like a little chip slice, you go in and you finish it off. And you train that into practice so much to a point that you recognize in a match, you just come in and you just do it. And that can apply to that one single thought alone pretty much apply to I think to a lot of like other high level player is they able to read their opponent's body language and dissect it and take advantage of it.
Yeah, because I mean, like I think at this point, right, in just our tennis training in general, is that like we've gotten to the point where we don't really have to think about technique that much anymore.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it extensively, right? Like training yourself to be so good in terms of like those uncomfortable situations that you're going in mentally prepared. But now there's another aspect that I want to cover. I think it's really important. Is kind of like the ego side of things. And when I say that, I mean like when you're playing against different type of players.
Yeah,
right.
That's interesting. Yeah,
That right. Like that now that's something that that's not something that you can practice. The tennis skill. The tennis skill you already mastered. Now you're prepared. You have all the tools. But now the mental side of thing is when you're going in there and you're playing against an opponent that is
seemingly not as good
as you. Like how do you or let's just say for example, and that's probably like a very classic case that I hear people complaining all the time is beating like moonballers, right? People who are like Chris, we talked about last week, pusher. He's the type of player that like thrive on those kind of things. Pusher on you making those mistakes. Yes, you're there. You're honing your shot of like, oh, now I can go and kill the moonballer ball. I can hit a few shots. But then what happened when you find yourself in a situation where you hit a couple good shots like that, but then you missed a few? That's when your mental is like, you're coming in and you're like, oh shoot, now I'm start missing. Now this guy's going to get me. He see that I make this mistake. How do you fight off that mentality that I'm better than this guy? Obviously, I have more weapons, but he's a pusher. He only have one, but I'm still losing. The frustration, the side of it. And a lot of the time, and I also made this mistake in the past, is that I start giving up or I start not caring. And I start, like this is not something that, this person is obviously worse than me. So I'm not even going to try. It's not worth it. So that's the other mental aspect that I want to address on this podcast.
I mean, I guess this not only really applies to us too. We can honestly relate that to like even the pros that are on the tour.
Yeah.
And I mean, the biggest example of that, we talked about him last week, is Kyrgios.
Yeah.
And I think like his mentality of things is like, this he kind of has this sort of like I don't care mentality.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes both. It kind of serves as a way for him to release or relieve the pressure for him.
It's a double edged sword. Sometimes he doesn't care. It makes him play better. He gets angry. It pumps him up and he plays better.
Yeah.
But sometimes he doesn't care and he starts tanking.
Yeah.
And then he lost. Two very different situations, right?
Like I think like how I see it is that like he has this sort of like don't care mentality in the sense of like, okay, like if he were to play like a lower level player, comparatively to him, if he loses that guy, he's like, I don't care. I wasn't trying anyways, right? So it's almost like there's no expectations there, and then like if he were to kind of put like himself against like somebody that's or like in a situation where like there's a lot at stake, it kind of goes both ways. Like it's like kind of relieves the pressure for him to kind of like
play better.
But
it has to be against a person who's better than him, or like not better than him, but like obviously has more success like you said, right? If Nick Kyrgios playing against a guy who's outside of top 200 and he's losing, I'm pretty sure he's going to go through like the tanking route that we always seen him do.
Yeah.
And but if he play against like Djokovic, who's on like a roll, like winning tournament, that is when that kind of like not, give a crap mentality comes into play, and he start blasting ball and start playing well.
Yeah.
But also like against a black guy like Djokovic, and now you're putting yourself in Djokovic's shoes. Djokovic still can beat Kyrgios last year in Wimbledon, right?
Yeah.
So now like you're seeing Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer. The reason why they're so good all the time is because of that mentality that they have. They don't care if they're playing against a good player or a bad player. They are going to beat that player.
Yeah.
That's why they're so good. So that's the one thing that I kind of want to talk about in this podcast. This situation is when you let like the ego dictate your play.
Yeah.
On how well you play, and for anybody out there who hasn't had a chance to watch, like it's called The Coach's Playbook on Netflix. On one of the episodes, Patrick Muratoglu specifically addressed this. And it's going back to the point earlier when you compare Nick Kyrgios to you saying, oh, he's losing to a person that is not as good as him. He decided to, give up. He doesn't care. So do you know why that is? Muratoglu made a very important point about that, because the ego that is being built up by these players.
Yeah.
You hear so what is the first thing that anybody have thought in their head when they hear the name Nick Kyrgios? Super talented guy. Yeah. Super talented guy. Everything come natural to him. Easy power, amazing serve. Never utilize his potential. That's generally is like the phrase that people associate it with when they hear the name Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah.
But like whenever people when people compliment you, right, like that, I'm talented. That's a cool, like if you go out there and you like everybody's look at you play and people are like, wow, Took, you're a talented player, or you're like, oh, amazing. Yeah. Everybody say I'm talented, and then you're going into, let's say for example, a 4-5 tournament.
Yeah.
And you got matched up with a guy who's worse than you, a guy who's not talented as you, but he's beating you, right? Now you're at risk of losing that. You're like,
you have to uphold the image.
Yeah, I'm talented. Like, I cannot be losing to this guy. Like, if I lose to this guy, does that mean that I'm not talented?
Yeah.
I can't afford to risk that.
Yeah.
I cannot afford to risk it in front of like all these people, like like Aaron, these people who saying that I'm talented, but I'm losing to this guy.
Yeah.
No way. So what do? You're like, oh, I'd rather make the choice consciously to give up, so I can say, oh, I lose because I choose to lose.
Like, you see what I'm saying? It's like I lose because I didn't care in the first place.
I didn't care in the first place. That's something, right? Like that Muratoglu, he made it so clear, because I always thought like, these people, they train so hard every single day. Like Kyrgios, yes, some you can question, but I've seen video of him practicing, like training. He trains probably just as hard as everybody.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these kind of situations, why does he do that? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. But that makes sense because he doesn't want to lose that label. He let the ego takes over him, consuming him in that case.
Yeah.
You see what, like, so I'm pretty positive with you. It clicks for me when Muratoglu said that, because it happens to me. Like, it happens to me, like, and I do the same thing in the past.
Yeah.
Whenever I play, like, with some of my friends who is not like who I believe is I'm better, but then I'm start losing. I'm like, it's more not to prove to everybody, but it proves to myself, to make myself feel better at the end of the day, which is not a good thing.
Yeah.
Like, I can always go home and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I lost that match, but because I decided to give up rather than I let that guy beat me, and that's not the good mentality to have.
Yeah, and I think like I'm not saying this is the right mentality, but it's like, my way that I would ideally like to approach it is like, basically just focusing on yourself, right? Because like you're like, you go out there and you do what you have to do, and you try just as hard as anybody else, and like disregarding like who's like on the other side of the net and like how they play.
Yeah,
you go out there and you put in your 110%, and you play like how you would play like anybody else. that's easier said than done, obviously, right? Because like the human mind is like we're pretty susceptible to the whole ego thing, obviously.
Yeah.
But like that's like the objective basically for everybody out there. I would like to say
Yeah,
for the most part.
that's why I mean the one thing that Muratoglu doesn't really address it for me on that episode is how he specifically apply it to like the general population of like
Yeah.
people who's going through that thought process. I think he gave an answer, but only specifically to the student that he was dealing with who have the same tanking problem.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, I was gonna say is when I b- now I'm training my mind to do that. When I find myself in those situations, I think I immediately think to myself like, look, even level playing field. Doesn't matter if this guy is better. Like you feel like you're better. You're in this situation. You're competing against him. Now it's just 1 versus 1,
Yeah.
me versus you kind of mentality. And a lot of people doesn't like Alexander Zverev. The one thing that I really admire Zverev for is his competitiveness. He basically said one time he said this. He said he was interviewed, and then the interview asking him a question like, "What's your favorite surface, like tennis surface? Grass, clay, hard court, or indoor?" He said, "No, it doesn't matter to me. It's me versus. It doesn't matter to me which surface. It's me versus you. I'll take you on any day, any surface."
Yeah.
Like he eliminate the factor of like, oh, this guy is better than me or I'm better than this guy. It's just me versus you as my competitor. Is me. It's on this specific day on this specific surface. We experience the same condition court. Let's see who's the better competitor. Let's go.
Because you think of it like this, right? Like you're going up against this guy. Let's say, for example, he's a moon baller, and you like he gives you all these like weird balls, and you're just not able to handle it. Like you can't hit them back, and you like hit it out wide or something like that. Like I think at the end of the day, like you can't blame them because like they found the weakness in your game.
Yeah.
So then it's just more like it's really comes down to it being your fault, and not like that's harsh to say, but it's just like you don't have that shot.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, you just don't have that shot.
Simply speaking.
Simply speaking, and how you can counter that? Going back to the beginning of the episode, what can you do? You go and you train it.
Yeah.
But then on that day, you bring it on. You're like, hey, I'm confident. I'm trained this, and I can beat you next time.
Yeah.
That's just that's the kind of mentality. But the thing you cannot do is to tank. I think tanking is like the worst. I told you. I said earlier. I'm admitted. I tanked before.
Yeah.
But the mentality for anybody's out there, including myself, going to tournament, even if somebody beating you down badly, don't ever give up. The best example, I mean, is like Nadal, right? The match against Zverev last year in the Australian Open, he was literally like down 2-0, and he came back and he win, right? Like
Against Medvedev.
Oh, Medvedev, sorry. He came back and he won. And I don't remember particularly whether or not the question was asked him during the interview about that match or another match, but I think there was an interview that was asked of him that year saying like, you have like a 10% chance of winning the match or something like that. And I forgot what he said specifically.
It was kind of somewhere along the lines of like basically he's like taking on the 10% chance that
he said
to be able to win.
Yeah, he said I'll take the 10% chance instead of like but if I don't try, it will be 0%.
I think that was it. Yeah.
Right. Like so he at least like in those situations he has like the not give up mentality, and I think the end of the day, when you're going out there and you don't have the answer, and the guy and the person is just beating you down, you don't have the best thing you can do is just putting in effort.
Yeah.
And you walk off the court rather than telling yourself, oh, I actually choose to lose. You can tell yourself at the end of the day, yes, I lost, but I gave 100% effort. And that to me, the latter answer means more than the first answer.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
So and actually, like, I kind of want to talk about this is use this to kind of talk about like your previous experience. Not, I don't believe it was last year tournament, but the tournament before, the year before. I think you bagel a guy in the first set, right? 6-0. It was a 3-5 or 3-0 or 3-5 tournament 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When you first start playing again, and that's when you didn't have the serve, but you have the backhand and the forehand already, and you were able to hit pretty decent topspin. And I think he was just he doesn't have a lot of technique. I think he was just having like slice or anything like that. He's just tapping the ball over.
Basically changed up his approach in general.
Right. He realized that
a little bit more.
he realized that he was not going to be able to hang with you on the back of the court.
Right. And, just to kind of like take the rhythm out of my game, he went up to the net, and that's where like it's like, okay, it became very apparent that I didn't have the passing shot.
Yeah.
And then from then on, like everything else just started breaking down. Like obviously with when playing in a match, like you have to have some level of confidence as well. When you lose that confidence, your serve starts tanking, and then like that being the weakest part of my game didn't really help at all. And so like I think from then on, it was just like I started losing my service games quite a bit from just double faulting, and as well as not being able to pass him just because he was at the net. I think, and if I remember correctly, he's mostly like a doubles player as well, and so his net game was a lot better than everything else.
But did you feel like you gave 100% towards the end when during the final set when he came back and he realized that he kind of uncovered your weakness that you didn't have a passing shot? Did you give up or did you continue to keep going? I forgot what the final score of oh, actually I do remember. It was a final set tiebreak.
It was his final.
So you hung in there. That's a really good example, right? Like you hung in there. You push him to a final set tiebreak. He came back. But didn't you guys push each other?
Yeah. No, like I definitely, I don't think I've ever like not tried. It's like I think like I remember even like in the second set, like I still broke him at some point. It's just like he ended up still winning the second set, and then it always like out of like the 2-3 tournaments that or two of those like first tournaments that I went to, both went to like a super tiebreaker near the end, and I that's just how it is at the time.
Oh,
but
yeah.
But I mean, I guess in terms of like your like tournament experience, right? When you played like the kid, right?
Is it the Balboa tournament, the younger kid? Yeah. So for that one, I was really So that one I won that match. It was my first open level tournament. I won that match against that kid, but I think he was just he was younger and he just didn't have a lot of experience playing matches. But that one I actually had a lot of trouble like getting the rhythm. He actually beat me in the first set, but then I told myself I hung in there and I can outgrind him towards the end, and I was able to outgrind him. And in the third set, I think he was just physically like not there anymore, and he kind of lost the confidence. That second set was very crucial because I think he beat me in first set 6-1.
Yeah.
The second set I was up, but then I keep losing my serve, and it was a mental struggle to like really hung in there. And there was a few key points that determined the match, because I could have also lost that second set, like probably like in a tiebreak or something, like 6-7, like what. But then I told myself like, okay, just hang in there and try to keep it to the backhand side. I realized that my backhand is better than his backhand, so I try to stay away from his forehand because his forehand was smacking winner from all over the place.
Yeah.
So I did a lot more backhand to backhand rally, and I was able to hang on and make him run more. So I was able to snap that second set 7-5. And then in the third set, he was just physically gone because he was younger.
Yeah.
And he was not that physically fit as I was.
Yeah.
So I was able to take away from that victory. It's like, that was one of the nicer victory that I have from that tournament. Yeah.
I guess speaking about like your other matches, right? Like with the other one at RPTC.
Yeah. The tournament pretty much like a year later, because the one that we just talked about was from 2 years ago.
I know, like obviously like the result weren't what you wanted.
Yeah.
So maybe you can kind of speak about like your I guess how you thought about it before going into the match, like how you perceived it, and then how you perceived it like after with the results.
Yeah. So for this particular match at RPTC, it was not one of my like prouder moment, because this is the one that we stay on the topic that we were just talking about, is when I it is when I kind of like give up, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right. Like so this was last summer. It was an open tournament at RPTC, so there was a lot of college player entering it. And my bracket, I was supposed to play against a kid. I think he's like an 8 UTR, but then the kid got injured and pulled out, so I didn't play my first round. But my second round, I I got pair with a guy who played Division 1. He was like an 11 UTR. So he double bagel the guy in the first round that he played with, and now I'm meeting him in the second round. So like building up to that match, um, I was just like, there was a lot of thoughts because this guy's way better than me, right? Like he's a Division 1 college player.
Yeah.
And I kind of prepped myself for that match too. It's just very similar to what we just talked about. It's like, I'm just gonna, go and try my very best, get every ball back, and do everything that I can. But just in this scenario, the guy was just like two or three UTR above my level, and then he just completely like destroyed me less than 40 minutes. But what didn't work well for me that day is the fact that I went in there and I'm like, I'm gonna try my best. I'm gonna do well. I'm gonna serve well. But when I started out, I didn't serve well.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it demoralized me.
Yeah.
In some sort of sense, and then immediately, I went into a mindset of like, nothing is working today.
Yeah.
And that's like the worst thing that you can possibly think of. And that was not one of my proudest moments. I was just literally thinking to myself like, nothing is working well today. And then he's just serving ace. I shanks return. Like I was, blaming, my shots, my racket, and everything like that, so that I just didn't get it going at all. And before you know it, it was over. It was like, I think it was like less than 40 minutes. Yes, it was a defeat, but it was a defeat that I was not proud of because I gave up pretty much like right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, you can argue like, I can go out there and I can make an excuse to saying like, oh, this guy was just way too much for me, but it was not that great. It was not a good excuse because the guy who played him beforehand also got double bagel, but that guy put up a fight.
Yeah.
So, it's just not a very proud moment that I was in, but I take it as an experience to say like, hey, in the future, if I have received another opportunity like this, I'm gonna try every single possible scenario to get out of that and to at least like put in a fight. So yeah, that's my biggest takeaway from that match, because a lot of, like I said, people just keep saying like, oh, he's way better than you and everything like that, but I don't think it's a good excuse. I think no matter how much better the player is, yes, he has all the tool, he has all the shot, he has all the spin, but I believe in my ability back then that I could have turned it around. I could have put up a much better effort than I did.
I guess this is kind of like a tough sort of question and like maybe a little bit open-ended, but do you have any like sort of specific things that you feel like after the match, like taking it forward into the future matches, like against a player that you feel like you're kind of like outmatched against?
Yes.
Like what is your sort of strategy would you kind of like take into those sort of matches?
The biggest thing for me is to stay calm, because we don't get to play with like a lot of the Division 1 college player every single day. Like, so the pace is different, the timing is different. For these guys, like when you go out there and you step on court, the biggest thing for me, or any player that's like above like 10 or 11 UTR, is like, you don't have that much time out there.
Yeah.
So playing against these guys, you need like experience playing against these guys. And that was the very first like 11 UTR guy that I play against. Is they will explore your weakness. That's what I just we talked about in the very beginning. The higher you go up there, the better they are at like understanding what shot you don't have and what shot you do have, and they're gonna pick the crap out of it. And that's what he did. And I guess to answer your question and going back to the point we're trying to make, is I would tell myself to be more calm in those situations and focus on the very simple thing. Like, are you moving your feet? Are you getting yourself into the right position to hit the ball? How good? Where you're positioning on the court that allows you more time to anticipate. Because that's what killed me, is that I feel like I was not in the right place on the court. My court positioning was not in the right place, and I let him dictate the point and I lose time. And the moment he takes away time, it's basically over. So in those situations, I wish I could have been more calm. I wish I was not so quick in, blaming myself, saying stuff like, oh, it's just not working today, so I'm going to give up. I wish I could have not say those kind of things mentally, because that essentially impacted me. So in short, I if I had the same opportunity again, I would have been more calm.
Yeah.
But then again, it's just come with experience.
Yeah.
Like after I lost that match, one of the things that I wish that I want to do to myself
Yeah.
is I'm gonna enter more tournament like that, and I want to have more experience playing these guys.
Yeah.
These type of guy, and I'm sure time over time I'm gonna find a way to play against them and put up a fight. Yeah.
I think it's really important in match play is that like you take time to think about like um bring it back to yourself and really think about like the things that are in your control.
Yeah.
Like because like not every like because obviously not everything's in your control. It's much easier said than done, but then it's like that's why it's important to really just be able to practice these sort of things and just make it become sort of routine where we put ourselves into these sort of like pressure situations, so then that we can kind of condition our minds to these sort of match plays.
Yeah. And I'll wrap it up on my end with this, and I think you're right. And you know how we can combat that. And I'm telling this to myself as I'm telling this to you and the general audience, is to don't be afraid to say yes to playing sets. I think that's one of the things that I was afraid of most. Is like in the past when Long asked me, "Oh, do you want to play a set?" I was like, "Oh, you know what? Let's just play a tiebreak," because I'm afraid of losing. I'm afraid of like, oh, if I lose this set, my day will be ruined. I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna start playing. But don't be afraid of doing that. And I'm gonna make it a statement like that for myself. For example, like if Larry or Jerome or anybody out there that wants to play like a match, we say yes to it because it's an opportunity for you to practice. It's an opportunity to put that ego aside, right? If you play against somebody who has like a strange play style, you'll be like, oh, if I lose to this, person, I practice every day.
Yeah.
My technique is, very honed versus him. Like he's just moonballing the ball. I might lose and I might question my shot and the time that I put in. No, like don't be afraid. Say yes to opportunity because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
These people, yes, they may or may not be at the same level. It's your ego that's saying those kind of stuff. So one, you need to ignore that. And two, look at it as an opportunity to practice your shot. They may be able to give you some shot that you haven't seen in practice.
Yeah.
View it as an opportunity.
It's really important to just put your 100% into everything, even just practice. Is that like, even when we hit the ball out or something like that, and it's like, or like we hit some sort of weird balls. It's very important to like get to the ones that we are able to, or like not even the ones that we aren't able to, because it's important to try and go for those. While it may seem impossible at the moment, if you keep going and keep trying those sort of shots, it's more possible than you think.
Yeah.
Because like in most times where like like in the past where we're practicing and like you or like somebody else, like they hit a shot where it's like, oh crap, like I can't run to it, like it seems like it's way too far, like I just run to it anyways. And like now it seems more possible than ever. Like I mean, like I it's like you start seeing that you're getting closer and closer to your goal like every single day. Like everybody should go out there and try their best.
Yeah.
Put in their best effort, and that is like the best mentality I think for anybody. Like I mean that's very prevalent in the greats.
Yeah.
And just go out there and giving it your all.
Yeah, I agree.
I think something that like I try to live by, at least for specifically just for tennis, is that like it's not over until like it's over.
Yeah.
And that definitely rings very true to the entire game. It's just that like even just not the entire match. It's like for every single point, you have to just keep going until it's over. Like there's no like, I'm gonna hit this and it seems like almost impossible for that guy to get back. You're gonna always have to expect the unexpected. And so like you see it till the end. Yeah, it's not over till it's over.
Yeah.
I mean that's the overall message of that.
Well, that's what we want to cover today. So I hope a lot of people will get the most benefits out of this conversation.
I guess yeah, to close this out, like I think this was definitely a much needed conversation with the tournament season coming up. Like it's like the adjustments that we have to make it within ourselves, and for all the people that are also planning on competing, these are sort of like our perspectives on things. So like, take it with a grain of salt. But like I think like yeah, it's definitely very important to
Yeah.
just go out
To
there and just um play matches and just giving it your all, because like yeah, that's just a good mentality to have, I think.
yeah.
So this has been the sixth episode of the Tennis Fans podcast. I hope you guys have a wonderful week up ahead, and
We'll talk again very soon.
thank you.
Thank you.